Welcome to United Daily Updates, your most trusted source for Manchester United news. Hello everyone and welcome back to United Daily Updates, the best place on the internet for everything Manchester United. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that right now because we bring you the latest news, honest analysis, player evaluations, and everything else you need to know about the Red Devils every single day. We work incredibly hard to be your most reliable and trusted source for all things Manchester United. We never spread fake rumors or sensational headlines just for clicks. We give you real information and thoughtful opinions that you can count on. Now let's get into today's important story about a young player whose future at United needs serious discussion. Introduction. When a young player's dream becomes a nightmare. Imagine being a teenager with dreams of making it at Manchester United. You have worked your whole life for this opportunity. You have sacrificed so much. You have beaten the odds to get a professional contract at one of the biggest clubs in world football. And then you get your chance. Your moment. A start in the Premier League at Old Trafford. This should be the greatest night of your young life. But instead of a fairy tale, it turns into a nightmare. You struggle from the first minute. Everything feels too fast. The opposition players are too strong and too experienced. You make mistakes. You look nervous. The crowd can sense your discomfort. And at halftime, you get substituted. Taken off. Your big chance is over after just 45 minutes. The dream has turned into a harsh reality check. This is exactly what happened to Aiden Heaven on Thursday night when Manchester United played West Ham United at Old Trafford. The 19-year-old defender was given his first Premier League start of the season. This was a huge opportunity for a young player trying to establish himself at one of the biggest clubs in world football. But unfortunately for Heaven, things did not go according to plan. According to multiple reports and match ratings, Heaven produced an unconvincing performance. The Manchester Evening News gave him the lowest rating among all Manchester United players, scoring his display as just 4 out of 10. Samuel Luckhurst, a respected journalist who covers United, described Heaven's first half as torrid. That is a damning word. Torrid means extremely difficult and unpleasant. It means Heaven really struggled out there. At halftime, manager Ruben Amorim made a change. Heaven was taken off and replaced by Mainoo Zirkzee. For a young player getting his first Premier League start, being substituted at halftime is brutal. It is a very public statement that you were not good enough. That your performance was so poor that the manager could not afford to keep you on the pitch. It is harsh, but it is the reality of professional football at the highest level. In this detailed blog post, we are going to talk about what went wrong for Aiden Heaven against West Ham. We will look at his background and how he ended up at Manchester United. We will examine why he got this opportunity and what happened during the match. We will discuss what this means for his future at the club. And we will explore the argument that Heaven needs to be loaned out in January for the good of his development. This is not about being mean to a young player who had a bad game. Every player has bad games, especially young players who are still learning. This is about honestly assessing where Heaven is in his development and what the best path forward is for him. Sometimes the kindest thing a club can do for a young player is send them out on loan so they can play regular football and develop properly. So let's dive deep into the situation with Aiden Heaven and figure out what Manchester United should do with this talented but clearly not yet ready young defender. Who is Aiden Heaven and how did he get here? Before we talk about what went wrong against West Ham, we need to understand who Aiden Heaven is and how he came to be at Manchester United. This context is important because it helps us appreciate both his potential and his current limitations. From West Ham Academy to Arsenal. Aiden Heaven is a 19-year-old English defender who was born in 2005. He is a centre-back, which means he plays in the heart of the defence. Centre-backs need to be strong, good in the air, able to read the game, and comfortable with the ball at their feet. These are qualities that take years to develop fully. Interestingly, Heaven actually started his career at West Ham United's academy. Yes, the same West Ham team that he played against on Thursday night. He came through their youth system as a young boy learning the game. But like many young players, Heaven moved clubs as he progressed through the age groups. He left West Ham and joined Arsenal's academy. Arsenal have one of the most famous youth development systems in English football. They have produced many great players over the years. For Heaven to be at Arsenal's academy shows that he was highly rated as a young player. You do not get into Arsenal's system unless scouts think you have real potential. At Arsenal, Heaven continued his development. He trained with some of the best young players in the country. He learned from top coaches. He played in youth competitions. Everything was going well and it looked like he might have a future at Arsenal. But then something changed. Manchester United come calling. Last season, Manchester United became interested in Aiden Heaven. They had been watching him at Arsenal and liked what they saw. United have scouts all over the country looking for young talent, and their reports on Heaven were positive. They believed he had the potential to become a good player. So United made their move. They approached Heaven and his representatives. They offered him the chance to join Manchester United's academy. This was a huge decision for a young player. Arsenal are a massive club, but Manchester United arguably even bigger with even more history and prestige. The opportunity to wear the famous red shirt and play at Old Trafford is a dream for many young English players. Heaven decided to make the move. He left Arsenal and joined Manchester United. This is what the football world calls poaching. It is when one big club takes a promising young player from another big club's academy. It happens all the time in modern football. Clubs are constantly trying to sign the best young players before their rivals do. For Manchester United, signing Heaven was seen as good business. They were getting a highly rated young defender without having to pay a transfer fee because he was still in the academy system. For Heaven, it was a chance to join one of the most famous clubs in world football and continue his development. The breakthrough moment last season. After joining Manchester United, Aiden Heaven continued playing for the academy teams and training with the first team occasionally. Then in February of last season, something happened that changed his trajectory dramatically. Manchester United had a major injury crisis in defense. Multiple defenders were injured at the same time. The manager was running out of options. When you have an injury crisis like this, young players sometimes get opportunities they would not normally get. And that is exactly what happened to Heaven. He was called up to the first team and given a chance to play. This was his breakthrough moment. His opportunity to show what he could do at the highest level. And from the reports we have, Heaven did well initially. He was described as fantastic in some of his early appearances. For a teenager stepping up from the academy to play for Manchester United's first team, this was incredibly impressive. It showed that he had real quality and that he was not intimidated by the big stage. Heaven was getting regular playing time. He was learning from every match. His confidence was growing. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. This is the dream scenario for any young player. You get your chance due to injuries. You take that chance with good performances, and you establish yourself as a genuine option for the manager going forward. But then disaster struck. Heaven suffered a knee injury in a match against Leicester City. Knee injuries are always concerning for footballers. They can be serious and can take months to recover from properly. For a young player who was just finding his feet in the first team, this was terrible timing. The injury setback. The knee injury that Heaven suffered against Leicester halted all his momentum. 1 minute he was a rising star getting regular game time for Manchester United. The next minute he was in the treatment room doing rehabilitation and watching from the sidelines as other players took his place in the team. This is one of the cruel realities of professional football. Injuries can destroy momentum and opportunity. When you are injured, other players get chances. If those players do well, they keep their place in the team. By the time you are fit again, you might find yourself back at the bottom of the pecking order having to prove yourself all over again. This is exactly what happened to Heaven. After recovering from his knee injury, he never earned another run in the starting lineup last season. The injury crisis that gave him his opportunity had been resolved. Other defenders were fit again. The manager had his preferred options back available. Heaven went from being a regular starter to being back on the fringes of the squad. For a young player, this must have been incredibly frustrating. He had shown he could perform at this level. He had proven he was good enough. But through no fault of his own, he lost his place due to injury and could not get it back. This is just how competitive it is at a club like Manchester United. There are so many good players competing for limited spots in the starting 11. This season before West Ham. Coming into this season, Aiden Heaven found himself in a difficult position. He was not an established first-team player. But he was probably too good to just play for the academy. He was stuck in that awkward middle ground where he needed opportunities but was not guaranteed to get them. Thursday night's match against West Ham was only Heaven's second start of the entire season for the first team. His first start had come in the Carabao Cup against Grimsby Town. And that match had not gone well either. Manchester United lost to Grimsby, which was a humiliating result. Heaven did not shine in that match. He was part of a team performance that was heavily criticised. So Heaven came into the West Ham match with very limited first-team experience this season. He had started one match and it had been a disaster. Now he was getting another chance in the Premier League. But as we will see, this opportunity did not go any better than the first one. The fact that Heaven had only started twice all season also tells us something important. Ruben Amorim, the Manchester United manager, clearly does not see Heaven as ready to be a regular first-team player yet. If he did, Heaven would be getting more opportunities. The manager only turns to Heaven when he has no other choice, when injuries or form issues with other defenders force his hand. Why did Heaven start against West Ham? Given that Heaven had barely played this season and had not impressed in his previous start, why did he get selected for such an important Premier League match at Old Trafford? This is a good question, and understanding the answer helps us appreciate both the opportunity Heaven was given and why it did not work out. The injury and form issues. The simple answer is that Ruben Amorim did not have better options available. Manchester United's defence has been dealing with various injury problems and form issues. On the day of the West Ham match, several defenders who would normally be ahead of Heaven in the pecking order were not available for selection. Matthijs de Ligt, the Dutch international defender who United signed from Bayern Munich, suffered a slight knock in training before the West Ham match. It was not a serious injury, but it was enough that Amorim decided not to risk him. Better to rest him for one match than to play him when he is not fully fit and risk the injury becoming worse. Harry Maguire, the English centre-back, has been dealing with his own injury problems and had not yet recovered enough to be considered for selection. Maguire has been a regular for United when fit, but injuries have limited his availability this season. Against West Ham, he simply was not ready to play. Lisandro Martinez, the Argentine defender who is usually a key player for United, had only recently returned from a lengthy injury layoff. He was not considered fit enough to start. Coming back from a long injury takes time. Players need to build up their match fitness gradually. Starting Martinez so soon after his return would have been risky. Mainoo Zirkzee, the young French defender who United signed in the summer, had played in the previous 2 matches and had produced poor performances in both. Amorim decided to rest him. When a player is in bad form, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is take them out of the firing line for a match and give them a break. Heaven gets his chance by default. So when you add all of this up, you can see why Aiden Heaven got the opportunity to start. De Ligt was injured. Maguire was injured. Martinez was not fit enough. Zirkzee needed a rest. The manager was running out of options at centre-back and had to turn to Heaven even though he clearly had doubts about whether the young player was ready. This is not the ideal way for a young player to get an opportunity. You want to be selected because the manager believes in you and thinks you are the best option. You do not want to be picked by default because everyone else is unavailable. But Heaven could not control the circumstances. All he could do was take advantage of the chance he was given. Amorim selected an unusual back 3 for the West Ham match. Heaven was in the middle with Nasser Mazraoui on one side and Luke Shaw on the other. This was not United's regular defensive setup. It was a makeshift arrangement forced by the injury situation. For Heaven, this was far from ideal. He was playing in a defensive system that the team had not used much. He was playing alongside defenders who were not the regular starters. There was no settled understanding or communication. Everything felt a bit disjointed and experimental. These are not the conditions where a young player is most likely to succeed. The pressure of the occasion. We also need to think about the pressure that Heaven was under. This was a Premier League match at Old Trafford. The stadium was full of expectant Manchester United fans. The media were watching. The opponent was struggling but still Premier League quality. And Heaven knew that he had not impressed in his previous start against Grimsby. For a 19-year-old playing only his second Premier League match, this is an enormous amount of pressure. Most teenagers are still figuring out who they are as people. They are dealing with normal young adult challenges. Heaven is being asked to perform at the highest level of English football in front of thousands of people with millions more watching on television. Some young players thrive under this kind of pressure. They have the personality and mental strength to treat it as just another match and play with freedom and confidence. Others find it overwhelming. The occasion gets to them. They tense up. They make mistakes. They struggle. Unfortunately for Aiden Heaven, he fell into the second category against West Ham. The pressure of the occasion seemed to affect him. He looked nervous from the start. He was not playing with the confidence and composure you need to succeed at this level. And as the first half went on, things only got worse. What went wrong during the match? Now let's talk about what actually happened during the West Ham match and why Heaven's performance was rated so poorly. Understanding the specific problems helps us assess whether this was just one bad game or whether it reveals deeper issues with Heaven's readiness for this level. A torrid first half. The word torrid was used by Samuel Luckhurst to describe Heaven's first half performance. Torrid is not a word you want to see associated with your performance in any context. It means extremely difficult, painful, and unpleasant. It suggests that Heaven was struggling badly throughout the first 45 minutes. What specifically was going wrong? While we do not have a detailed play-by-play breakdown of every mistake Heaven made, we can infer some things from the reports and from what typically happens when a young defender has a torrid time. First, Heaven was probably struggling with the pace of the game. The Premier League is incredibly fast. Everything happens quickly. You have to make decisions in split seconds. You have to react to movements and runs. You have to stay focused and alert for 90 minutes because one lapse in concentration can cost your team a goal. For a young player with limited experience, this pace can be overwhelming. Second, Heaven was likely having problems with positioning. Defending is not just about physical attributes. It is about being in the right place at the right time. Reading the game. Anticipating what the opposition will do. Covering space. Supporting your teammates. These things come with experience. A 19-year-old is still learning these aspects of the game. Third, Heaven may have been making poor decisions on the ball. Modern centre-backs are expected to be comfortable in possession. They need to pass accurately. They need to know when to play simple and when to play forward. They need to stay calm under pressure. If Heaven was giving the ball away or making nervous passes, that would contribute to a poor performance rating. Fourth, there was at least one specific incident that we know about. Heaven got booked early in the match. Receiving a yellow card in the first half is never good. It means you have to be careful for the rest of the game. One more bad tackle and you are sent off. For a young player who was already struggling, having to play the rest of the match on a yellow card would have added even more pressure. The half-time substitution. The clearest sign that Heaven was not having a good game came at half-time when Ruben Amorim decided to take him off. Half-time substitutions are not common unless a player is injured or has been playing absolutely terribly. Managers usually give players the full 90 minutes unless there is a good reason not to. Amorim decided that keeping Heaven on the pitch was not an option. Even though United had not conceded a goal in the first half, the manager clearly felt that Heaven was a liability who needed to be removed. So he brought on Mainoo Zirkzee, the young French defender who had been rested, to replace Heaven for the second half. For Heaven, this must have been devastating. Getting substituted at half-time in your first Premier League start of the season. In front of your home fans at Old Trafford. It is a humiliating experience. Everyone in the stadium knows why you have been taken off. You were not good enough. The manager lost confidence in you after just 45 minutes. This is the harsh reality of professional football at the highest level. If you are not performing, you get taken off. There is no room for sentiment or feeling sorry for young players. The team's performance and results matter more than any individual's feelings. Amorim made the ruthless but probably correct decision to remove Heaven at half-time. The match rating and analysis. After the match, various journalists and publications gave their ratings for each Manchester United player's performance. These ratings are subjective opinions, but they give us a sense of how the player was perceived by those watching closely. The Manchester Evening News gave Aiden Heaven a 4 out of 10 rating. This was the lowest rating given to any Manchester United player in that match. A 4 out of 10 is bad. It is saying that the player was well below the acceptable standard. It is a failing grade. It reflects a performance where the player struggled throughout and did not contribute positively to the team. To put this in context, most players who have an average but unremarkable game get ratings around 6 out of 10. Good performances get 7 or 8 out of 10. Exceptional performances get 9 or even 10 out of 10. Poor performances get 5 out of 10 or lower. So a 4 out of 10 is definitely in the poor performance category. The fact that Heaven got the lowest rating of all the United players is significant. It means that in a match where United as a team did not play particularly well and ended up drawing 1-1, Heaven was seen as the weakest link. He was the player who struggled most. He was the one who let the team down. These ratings and analyses from journalists are not personal attacks on Heaven. They are honest assessments of his performance based on what was observed during the match. Sometimes young players have bad games. It happens. The question is what you learn from it and how you respond. Heaven's track record this season. The West Ham performance was not an isolated incident. Let's look at Aiden Heaven's track record this season to get a fuller picture of where he is in his development. The numbers tell a story. According to the statistics provided in the article, Aiden Heaven has made very few appearances for Manchester United this season. He has played 3 matches for the Premier League squad with no goals or assists. He has played once in the Carabao Cup with no goals or assists. And he has played once in what appears to be a lower-level cup competition with no goals or assists. Now, we should note that as a defender, Heaven is not expected to score many goals or provide many assists. That is not his job. His job is to defend well, keep clean sheets, and help the team not concede goals. But the number of appearances is what matters here. 5 total appearances across all competitions for the entire season so far. That is not very many at all. Of those 5 appearances, only 2 have been starts. The Grimsby Town match in the Carabao Cup and the West Ham match in the Premier League. Both of these starts resulted in poor team performances and poor individual performances from Heaven. United lost to Grimsby in humiliating fashion. United drew with West Ham after throwing away a winning position. Heaven did not shine in either match. This track record raises an important question. Is Heaven getting enough playing time to develop as a player? When you only play 5 matches in an entire season, with long gaps between appearances, it is very hard to build rhythm, confidence, and match fitness. Players need regular game time to improve. They need to play week in and week out to develop their skills and understanding of the game. The awkward middle ground. Aiden Heaven finds himself in an awkward middle ground that many young players at big clubs experience. He is too good to just play for the under-21s or academy teams all season. He has already shown last season that he can play for the first team. But he is clearly not ready or trusted enough to be a regular first-team player. This middle ground is difficult to navigate. If Heaven plays for the under-21s, he is probably the best player on the pitch most weeks. The games are too easy for him. He is not being challenged or stretched. He is not learning much because he is playing against opponents who are below his level. This does not help his development. But if Heaven sits on the first-team bench waiting for rare opportunities, he is not playing enough. He gets the occasional appearance here and there, but it is not enough to maintain match sharpness or build confidence. And when he does play, it is often in difficult circumstances like injury crises where the team is not settled and the conditions are not ideal for a young player to succeed. This is the fundamental problem that Heaven and Manchester United face. He needs to be playing regular football to continue his development. But United cannot give him that regular football because they are competing at the highest level and need to win matches. When you are Manchester United playing in the Premier League, you cannot afford to play a 19-year-old who is still learning every week. You need established, experienced players who give you the best chance of winning. Comparison to other young players. It is interesting to compare Heaven's situation to other young players at Manchester United. Some young players manage to break into the first team and become regulars despite their age. Mainoo is a good example. He is still very young, but he has established himself as a genuine first-team option who plays regularly when fit. What is the difference between Mainoo and Heaven? Why has one succeeded in becoming a regular while the other is stuck on the periphery? There are several possible reasons. Maybe Mainoo is just more talented. Maybe he has a better mentality and handles pressure better. Maybe he plays in a position where United have fewer quality options, so it is easier to get chances. Maybe he has just been luckier with injuries and opportunities. Whatever the reasons, the comparison shows that it is possible for young players to make it at Manchester United. But it is also very difficult. The standards are incredibly high. The competition for places is fierce. Only the very best young players with the right combination of talent, mentality, and opportunity manage to become regular first-teamers. Right now, Aiden Heaven is not in that category. He is not one of the young players who has forced his way into regular consideration. He is one of the ones who gets occasional chances when the manager has no other option, struggles in those chances, and then goes back to waiting for the next opportunity. Why Heaven needs a loan move in January? Based on everything we have discussed, there is a strong argument that the best thing for Aiden Heaven's development would be to go out on loan in January. Let's explore why this makes sense and what kind of loan would be most beneficial. He is too good for the academy. At 19 years old and with first-team experience already under his belt, Aiden Heaven has outgrown academy football. He should not be playing for Manchester United's under-21 team or youth teams. That level is below him. He would dominate those matches without being challenged or stretched. Playing against teenagers who are years away from professional football does nothing to prepare Heaven for the demands of the Premier League. When a young player reaches this stage, they need to be playing men's football. They need to be competing against fully grown adults who are physically mature and experienced. They need to deal with the intensity and physicality of proper senior football. This is the only way they will continue developing and learning. Manchester United's academy is excellent for developing young players up to a certain point. But there comes a time when players need to leave the academy environment and test themselves in the real world of competitive senior football. Heaven has reached that point. Keeping him in the academy would be a waste of his talent and potential. He is not ready for United's first team. On the other hand, the West Ham performance and his overall track record this season suggest that Heaven is not yet ready to be a regular first-team player for Manchester United. The level is too high for him right now. The pressure is too intense. The margin for error is too small. He needs more time to develop before he can consistently perform at this level. This is not a criticism of Heaven. Being not quite ready for Manchester United's first team at age 19 is completely normal and understandable. Most defenders do not peak until their mid to late 20s. Centre-backs in particular need years of experience to fully develop their positional sense, decision-making, and reading of the game. Expecting a 19-year-old to be the finished article is unrealistic. The problem is that Manchester United cannot afford to give Heaven the regular playing time he needs to develop while also competing for trophies and Champions League qualification. The stakes are too high. The pressure is too intense. When you are Manchester United, you need to win most of your matches. You cannot treat league games as development opportunities for young players who are still learning. This creates a dilemma. Heaven needs to play regularly to develop. But United cannot give him regular playing time in their first team. So what is the solution? The loan solution. The answer is a loan move. Sending Heaven out on loan to another club where he can play regular first-team football makes perfect sense for everyone involved. He gets the playing time he desperately needs. He gets to develop his skills in competitive matches. He gets to build confidence and experience. And Manchester United maintain ownership of a player who might become very good in the future. Loan moves are a common and accepted part of modern football development. Big clubs routinely loan out their young players to smaller clubs where they can get regular game time. If the loan goes well and the player develops as hoped, they come back to their parent club ready to contribute at a higher level. If the loan does not go well, at least you have learned something about the player's limitations. For Heaven specifically, a loan move in January could save his season. Right now he is wasting time sitting on United's bench or playing for the academy. 6 months playing every week somewhere else could accelerate his development enormously. He would come back next summer a much more experienced and confident player. The key is finding the right loan club. Not all loans are created equal. Some loans work out brilliantly. Others are disasters. The next section will discuss what kind of loan would be best for Heaven. Where should Heaven go on loan? If Manchester United do decide to loan out Aiden Heaven in January, they need to be smart about where they send him. The wrong loan club could actually harm his development rather than help it. So what should United be looking for? One option is another Premier League club. There are several teams in the bottom half of the table who might be interested in taking Heaven on loan. These clubs are always looking to improve their squads without spending money on permanent transfers. A loan signing from Manchester United's academy would be attractive to them. The advantage of staying in the Premier League is that Heaven would be playing at the highest level of English football. The quality of opposition would be good. The pressure and intensity would be high. If he can succeed in the Premier League, even for a struggling team, it would prove he belongs at that level. The disadvantage is that bottom-half Premier League clubs are often in survival battles. They are under enormous pressure to get results. Managers at these clubs do not have much job security and cannot afford to take risks on unproven young players. Heaven might find that even at a weaker Premier League club, he does not get the regular playing time he needs. Another option is the Championship. This is the second tier of English football. The standard is lower than the Premier League, but it is still very competitive. The Championship is known for being physically demanding and tough. It is a good testing ground for young players. Many successful Premier League players spent time in the Championship early in their careers learning their trade. It is a level where young players can play regularly, make mistakes and learn from them, and develop without quite as much pressure as the Premier League. For Heaven, a loan to a Championship club where he is guaranteed to start most weeks could be ideal. The key thing is that wherever Heaven goes, he needs to be playing. Not sitting on the bench. Not being a backup option. He needs to be a regular starter playing 90 minutes every week. That is the only way a loan move makes sense and benefits his development. United's history with loans. Manchester United have a mixed track record with loaning out young players. Some loans have worked brilliantly and helped develop players who came back and contributed to the first team. Other loans have been disasters where players barely played or got injured or ended up in situations that did not help their development at all. The key to a successful loan is careful selection of the club, regular monitoring of the player's progress, and good communication between all parties involved. United need to make sure that wherever Heaven goes, he will be valued and used properly. They need to stay in touch with him throughout the loan to track his development and provide support. If United just send Heaven somewhere without proper planning and monitoring, the loan could be a waste of time. But if they do it properly, with the right club and the right support structure, it could be exactly what Heaven needs to take his career to the next level. The wider context. United squad planning. The discussion about Aiden Heaven and whether he should be loaned out fits into a wider context of Manchester United squad planning and development of young players. Let's think about what this situation tells us about how United are operating. Too many young players in limbo. Aiden Heaven is not the only young Manchester United player in an awkward position. The article mentions that Mainoo and Mainoo Zirkzee have been linked with possible exits. There are other young players at the club who are not getting regular game time and are probably wondering about their futures. This raises questions about Manchester United's overall approach to developing young players. Are they doing a good job of giving young players a pathway to the first team? Or are they signing or producing too many young players and then not knowing what to do with them? Big clubs like United face a difficult balance. They want to have talented young players in their system who might become stars. But they also cannot have too many young players sitting around not playing because that is bad for everyone involved. Young players need to be playing to develop. If United cannot provide that playing time, they need to loan players out or even sell them with buyback clauses. The fact that multiple young United players are in uncertain positions suggests that maybe the club's planning and pathway from academy to first team needs improvement. There should be clearer plans for each young player. If they are not ready for the first team, they should be out on loan developing. They should not be stuck in limbo. Learning from other clubs. Some clubs are much better than others at developing young players and integrating them into the first team. Brighton, for example, have done an excellent job of bringing through young players and either using them in their first team or selling them for profit. They have a clear development plan for each player. They use loans intelligently. They create a pathway that young players can follow. Manchester United could learn from clubs like Brighton. They need better systems and structures for managing young players. They need to be more decisive about whether a young player is going to make it at United or whether they should be moved on. They need to use loans more effectively as a development tool. The Aiden Heaven situation is a test case. If United make the right decision and loan him out to a club where he plays regularly and develops, it shows they are learning and improving their approach. If they keep him at United where he barely plays, it shows they are still making the same mistakes and not managing young players properly. The pressure to win now. Part of the problem is that Manchester United are under enormous pressure to win now. The club has not won the league title in over a decade. Fans are frustrated. Expectations are high. Ineos, the new owners, want to see improvement and success. This pressure to win immediately makes it very difficult to give young players opportunities. When every match matters and dropping points is seen as a crisis, managers cannot afford to take risks on inexperienced players. They need to pick their strongest and most reliable team, which usually means experienced players rather than young prospects. This is why loans make so much sense. They allow young players to develop elsewhere without United having to risk points in their own matches. The player gets the experience they need. United retain ownership and can bring them back when they are ready. It is a solution that addresses both the need to develop young players and the pressure to win now. The Mainoo and Zirkzee references. The article mentions that Kobbie Mainoo and Joshua Zirkzee have been linked with exits. This is interesting because it shows that even players who have had more first-team involvement than Heaven are facing uncertain futures. Mainoo is a midfielder who broke through last season and played quite regularly. He is clearly talented. But apparently he has fallen out of favour with Ruben Amorim to some extent and there is speculation he might leave. This shows how quickly situations can change at a big club. One season you are an important player. The next season you are being linked with an exit. Zirkzee is a forward who United signed recently. He is more established than Heaven but apparently has not done enough to secure his place in Amorim's plans. The fact that a relatively recent signing is already being discussed as a potential departure shows how ruthless decisions are at this level. If even players like Mainoo and Zirkzee, who have played much more than Heaven, are facing uncertain futures, it really highlights how precarious Heaven's position is. He is even further down the pecking order than they are. If they might leave, what chance does Heaven have of regular first-team football at United? This is why the article's argument makes sense. Forget Mainoo and Zirkzee for a moment. Aiden Heaven's situation requires Ineos' swift attention just as much, if not more. He is a young player with potential who is currently wasting his time at Manchester United. Something needs to happen in January to give him the opportunity to develop properly. What should happen in January? As we approach the January transfer window, Manchester United's leadership need to make a decision about Aiden Heaven. Let's think about what the options are and what the right choice would be. Option 1. Keep him at United. One option is to do nothing. Keep Heaven at Manchester United for the rest of the season. He stays in the squad as a backup option who might get the occasional appearance if there are injuries. He trains with the first team and continues his development in that environment. The argument for this approach is that training with Manchester United